Today, we're going to tell you about Angel Dominguez Ramirez Jr., a former United States Marine who dreamt of serving his country, and he was very well prepared for this. But a fatal accident changed his life completely. From U.S. Marine to founder and leader of a cartel responsible for trafficking throughout the Americas. It'll be up to you to make your conclusión about this former Marine. Comment down below and tell us what you think. Don't forget to like our video, subscribe to the channel, and, you get much more content about this narco world. Angel Dominguez Ramirez Jr. was born in Puebla, Mexico in 1972. His mother, Ermelinda, was a housewife, and his father, Angel Dominguez, was a chemical engineer. When Angel Jr. was 2 years old, his father died in an explosion at the refinery where he was working. When Angel Sr. died, his paternal grandparents tried to take custody of him, but his mother objected and moved to Tamaulipas, the state of Sonora, right next to the border with the U.S. Years later, she obtained the documents to move to Roma, Texas. They moved to the United States in 1980. Angel Jr. started working in construction when he was 13 years old to help with the household expenses. When he graduated from high school, he married his high school sweetheart, and then they had 2 daughters, Zaira and Diana. When they divorced, it was Angel Jr. who got the custody of the girls. Also, after high school, he enlisted in the Marines to serve his country. By 1994, Dominguez Ramirez had served his country for 4 years as a Marine, and he was on a 6-month extension period waiting to begin training in the Operations Corps, into which he'd been inducted. November 24th of that year would be the day that would change everything. That afternoon, Sergeant Dominguez Ramirez left work at the North Carolina Office of Administration. Angel was a single father who was preparing himself academically and attending the local university. The Marine was driving through a rural stretch near the forest when suddenly a deer appeared, and he tried to avoid it. In the maneuver, he lost control of the car and it overturned into the water under a bridge. One person saw the accident and immediately called for help. Angel and his daughters were taken seriously injured to the hospital, but the first thing he found out when he woke up was that his daughters did not survive the accident. That was the event that had changed his life dramatically. After the accident, Angel Jr. had to remain in the hospital for 6.5 months. He underwent surgery 20 times to recover his foot. In 1995, he was able to leave the hospital, but with permanent disabilities, so he was discharged from the Marines. After this, he went back to Roma, Texas. He tried to rebuild his life. He got married again, and 3 daughters were born. After months of rehabilitation, he tried to find a job. After the accident, Dominguez Ramirez needed a cane to walk, and he could only remain standing for a short time. It was very difficult for him to find a job. This resulted in the impossibility of financially supporting his family, as he had done before. This had great repercussions on his self-esteem. He decided to accept an offer to deliver a shipment from Tamaulipas to the U.S. He was 27 years old at the time, and he was caught by the local police. After being intercepted, the new trafficker pleaded guilty, and he was imprisoned for 13 months. He was released in 1998. After being in prison, Angel tried to put his life back on track. His brother-in-law and he started a small construction business, and they were doing well. But in 2007, when the real estate market crashed, their company went bankrupt. At that moment, he went back to Mexico and tried to find a job. But after a while, he ended up in the trafficking business again. This is how the former Marine was recruited by the Los Zetas, which until then was a part of the Gulf Cartel. He remained part of the organization for 5 years and was nicknamed Z39. The organization was the most bloodthirsty and feared in Mexico up to that time. Other reasons he was adopted by Mexico's most feared cartel to date were his Tamaulipan background and his military training. The last aspect of his abilities was one of the main reasons he was recruited by this cartel. Its founders were deserters from the Mexican Army's now defunct Special Forces Air Mobile Group, GAFE. While he was a part of this cartel, Angel collaborated with Jorge Eduardo Costilla Sanchez, El Cos, who was one of the last leaders of the Gulf organization, which by then was engaged in an internal war with Los Zetas. In 2012, El Cos was arrested. After that, Z39 and his group settled in Monterrey, Nuevo León. In Monterrey, Seguimiento 39 was born. It began as an organization that was in charge of bringing weapons from the United States to Mexico and arranging transportation for trafficking. It also created private security companies and other money laundering businesses. Because of his military training, he was also in charge of setting up special groups to guard drug shipments. Initial reports show that the cartel's connections reached as far as Peru, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Costa Rica. From these countries, drugs were imported to Chiapas by sea or open air. Once in southern Mexico, cocaine was moved to the United States through border crossings in Texas and California. To accomplish this, he had to form alliances with the Jalisco Cartel, New Generation, the Beltran Leyva, the Gulf Cartel, and the Zetas. These criminal groups are enemies of each other, and they're engaged in a bloody dispute to control drug routes and the drug trafficking market. For having succeeded in allying with these enemy organizations, it received the name Cartel of Cartels. His main innovation was the development of cooperative alliances using silver rather than lead, unlike other narco leaders. Anyways, according to official records, these alliances between rival groups resulted in the deaths of more than 200,000 people. Anyways, as a consequence of this alliance, Seguimiento 39 started trafficking to the US. Meanwhile, other cartel leaders also trusted this group to take good care of their business. Federal Judge William Q. Hayes noted that the Lord trafficked a staggering amount of product to the US soil. It's estimated that he moved around 10 tons of this from South America each month, and at the same time, his accomplices sent him $10 million to his guards in Mexico. He was the unquestioned leader, as wiretaps show that he was the one who controlled all aspects of this organization. By this point, Dominguez was already on the DEA's radar. He learned this in 2016 through Ivan Reyes Arzate, La Reina, who was the commander of the Mexican Federal Police's Sensitive Investigation Unit, one of the information exchange links between Mexico and the US. The former Mexican agent met with the narco leader to warn him that he was wanted. To prove it, Reyes Arzate showed him some photographs of himself that had been taken in Cancun, as well as the address of an apartment where he and his accomplices were hiding in Mexico City. La Reina took a bribe for $290,000 in order to keep Domingo Ramirez. The agreement involved more than 450 kilograms of product. Some other sources say that Dominguez committed Reyes to deliver the information about El Cartel del Golfo. Finally, La Reina was captured in 2017. He was convicted in the United States for this case and other acts of corruption to favor different cartels. In 2018, he was sentenced to 3 years behind bars in Chicago for obstructing justice. And then in 2021, he pleaded guilty before the Eastern District Court of New York for collaborating with Follow 39, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Reyes Arzate is a key piece in the case against Genaro Garcia Luna, former Felipe Calderon security secretary, arrested in the U.S. for ties to traffic. La Reina confirmed accusations against Garcia Luna. In 2016, El Zeta-39 was arrested in Mexico during a military operation to face 13 charges of trafficking and money laundering, for which he's already been found guilty with other 15 people being accused. The indictments were presented to a grand jury in January 2016 before the Southern District of California. By October of that year, an arrest warrant was issued, and a month later, he was arrested in the city of Querétaro at the request of the United States. A provisional arrest warrant for extradition purposes was served in Mexico on December 7th, something that wasn't finalized until April 10th of 2019. When he arrived and appeared in a court in San Diego, he spent 888 days in solitary confinement without receiving visitors. COVID-19 brought many obstacles to achieving a firm sequence against Dominguez Ramirez. Angel suffered 3 times from the disease. Amid these obstacles, on October 12, 2021, the defense asked for a plea hearing. This plea only contemplated 1 count of knowingly and intentionally conspiring to distribute, in addition to money laundering. Prosecutors accepted the plea. His defense asked for 10 years in prison. Finally, Judge William Hayes sentenced him to 16 years and 3 months, ordering that he be taken as sentencing credit from the time of his arrest on November 3, 2016. And this is how the narco leader would walk free in 10 years. What do you think about this sentence? Too soft? Only 10 more years for this narco to walk free? Or is the state responsible in a way for his turn to criminal life? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and hit that notification bell.